Welcome to Cosmic Besties. We are your cosmic besties, your place for deep, soulful conversations where it feels like hanging out with your best friend. Today, our topic is going to be the nice girl. So Kelly's going to kick us off and kind of talk a little bit about what it is we're going to be diving into today.
Yeah, so Christy and I were chatting the other day about how we've both been on this journey over time of healing from society. And girls are often socialized to be accommodating, polite, deferential. And what this leads to is these behaviors of over apologizing, people pleasing, or shrinking who we are in social or even professional settings.
Mhm.
And that has a really negative impact on us showing up as our most authentic selves. So we wanted to dive in and just talk about, you know, our own journeys in this space, as well as some data to back up that you're not alone, and then dive into some of our personal tips, having experienced this, for how you can overcome a lot of these, we'll call it norms that society has forced you into. Um, so I think for me, I like people pleasing and um, perfectionism are sort of the two flavors of how this has most showed up for me over time. Definitely accommodating others. What about you, Chris?
I definitely, well, I mean, I feel like there's definitely multiple. The people pleaser for sure. And also feeling like I can't take up space, like making myself small or not saying what I feel or just not speaking up in general because you're placing, without even realizing it, you're placing value on other people's like feeling comfortable and other people's feelings over your own. So that was like a big one for me that I think I'm still working on, but I'm kind of getting through it.
Yeah. I don't know, something you said made me remember too. I think mine also shows up a little bit as hyper achievement. And so it
Mm,
goes back to kind of um, these are neural pathways that your brain has created to protect you over time. So for me, like the hyperachiever, it was this validation from people who loved me that when I was doing things, achieving things, or helping, I was of value then. And so
yeah.
that your brain then goes, "Oh, okay, you're of value when you do these things. Let's create this for you as like a safety mechanism." And so it almost becomes this unconscious thing you do over time, and that becomes more difficult to change or even eradicate from your life.
Yeah. I think it's almost twofold too. Like I think part of it is like some of the experiences you had or like you said the stories that were programmed into you at a small age. And I also think some of it is just like society and kind of what we've always been told, which I think plays into those stories. But I think that there's two aspects here. You have like that kind of whatever you needed to maybe survive or to make you feel like you were a part of the group maybe, and then the other part where it's like programming from like what we've been told since little girls of how you should react, how you should be polite, how you should always um you know say please and thank you and be a nice person. Those are all programs that you're not born into thinking. It's something that society or your parents or teachers have kind of groomed into you. Um, I feel like I shouldn't use the word groom, but have like, that's not what I meant. They have, yeah, like programmed into you unintentionally a lot of the times, so that that's what you grow up believing your value stems from. When it's so screwed up, when you think about like your value, it's not because you were an overachiever or a high achiever. It's not because like I was a nice girl. Your value is just because you're a decent human being, and we all have different gifts that we bring to this earth. And um, it shouldn't matter whether somebody likes you or not, but we're kind of programmed to believe that that's a really important part of this like human experience.
Yeah. I definitely, that resonates for me. And I think back to some of just the friendships and the relationships that I maintained over the years that weren't necessarily serving my best interest, but
Mhm.
I wanted so desperately to fit in. And this ties back to one of our other past episodes too, with like this fear of being seen or this fear of persecution. And so
Mm,
like that's a past life element that I've also pulled in into
yeah.
my healing journey where like I've realized that some of the people pleasing and the over apologizing or the hyper achievement has been because I want to fit in and I wanted to make sure that like I matched other people and I wasn't different. But that wasn't me.
Yeah. We talked about this a little bit in the live. It's interesting when you brought up the past lives. Um, I do think that like there's past life trauma or programming stories that come with you into this life. And maybe it's to aid you in like your path, and kind of like checking off those boxes and learning those lessons. But I also think there's something about like the generational trauma that is like passed down from generation to generation. You know, like in our live, we talked about the cherry blossom study and how like generational ancestral trauma actually is passed down through offspring. So it makes sense, like if way down the line, you know, our grandmothers were taught like that scarcity mindset or to always be a certain way, that it's just continuously like a cycle of being passed down from woman to woman.
Mhm.
Um, I think for myself, like I definitely had that like nice girl persona, and it was because I wanted to be liked. Like I figured out at a very young age, that being nice meant that like people were going to give me attention or people were going to like me. And it was almost like a, um, you might know the word for this. What is the attachment style where you like cling to things because you're afraid of being abandoned? Is it like avoidant? I can't remember.
Oh, so I that's the anxious attachment style.
Yeah, and I would cling to things that like were not good for me or things that I
Uh,
didn't even really want, but it's like it's just so ingrained in you to be liked or to derive love through being liked that that's what I would do. I remember in high school I was a freshman and music has always been a big part of my life. My mom was a voice teacher and so like I sang growing up. And I remember the older girls, upperclassmen, when we were trying out for the musical, were like, "Oh yeah, like underclassmen like are not going to get the main parts. Like just be okay with being in the chorus." And I was, but it was I think it was Jesus Christ Superstar, and I sang that song. That's the Mary Magdalene song that she sings, which is like, I love that song so much. And I sang it beautifully and it was like perfectly in my range. It was, you know, like it was like not written for me, but it was written for like my type of voice.
mhm.
And at the end of it, the director was like, "Oh, like would you feel playing this part? We think you should be Mary Magdalene." And inside of me, everything inside of me, all those like little like guidance like system turning on, saying yes, like this is what I want, um this is what I want to do, but I turned it down because I knew like an upperclassman would want it and I felt like it wasn't my turn. And that has been a pattern throughout my life, and that is completely lacking self-worth because you're choosing somebody else's value over your own.
Yeah,
Which is why I think like this topic is so important to talk about because I know we're probably not alone in this.
absolutely. Yeah, I you shrunk yourself so that someone else could
Mhm.
feel big, and that's not
Yes.
right. Yeah, another flavor of that was in the fifth grade, we moved homes and school districts. And in the district that I was in, I was really happy. I was able to show up as my full self. I was in the gifted and talented program there, and being smart was not a bad thing. Being smart was a cool thing, right? Everyone kind of respected everyone's individual differences. In moving to the new school, it didn't really feel that way in fifth grade, but as we started, I was only there for half a year for fifth grade, but as I started sixth grade, I quickly learned that being smart was not a cool thing. And in order to fit in, I pretended to be dumber than I was. Now, you can only mask so much, right? But like, the truth will eventually come out because wearing that mask is like wearing a really heavy set of armor that
Yeah.
eventually weighs you down. And in order for you to survive, you have to shed some of that. So it didn't last very long, but I distinctly remember in sixth grade shrinking myself in that way in order to fit in so that I would have friends and people would like me because I wasn't too smart. And
Yeah.
that hurts, you know?
And to me, like that's not a true friendship. It's not fair for you, but it's also not fair for them because
Right.
they think they're being friends with like a certain Kelly,
Yeah.
but really they're not getting able to experience the full expression of Kelly. And I definitely did that too. Do you remember I remember this so vividly because I remember watching it and being like, oh my gosh, like a light bulb going off above my head, like you see in cartoons. I was like, oh my gosh, like this, I feel seen. That scene in I can't speak, in Runaway Bride where Julia Roberts like finally figures out that like she has just been like molding herself to every guy she's dated or every person she's around. And she's like, I don't even know what type of eggs I like. I remember thinking that and being like, I do the exact same thing. And then it's like taking a step back and being like, oh my gosh, like I don't think I know myself at all because I've spent so many years molding myself to fit in with whatever group I was, hanging out with at that time.
Yeah, that definitely resonates. And that
Mhm.
makes me think of like it's been a bit of a roller coaster for me. So eventually I kind of went into my authenticity and I would like change and be me. And then like it was starting off in a new place. I remember this. So at SLU, like um being away from home, you're making new friends. And it
Mhm.
wasn't with friends this time. Like I had realized it's better to show up as your full self with friends. But like you said, with different guys I dated, I would
Mhm.
sort of mold myself to whatever, they needed or wanted.
Yeah.
And that's
Which is
definitely
not fair for either person. I was just listening to a podcast and she was talking about like self-worth and self-worth specifically in relationships. And she's like, you should be with somebody who thinks that they're the luckiest person alive to be with you. And if you're not showing up as your true 100% expression of self, how can they ever know like what they're missing if they leave or what they're gaining if they stay? Like to me, like it's unfair to both people because it's like a kind of it's even though like you're not lying, it is a little bit of a lie to that person. And it's also a lie to you because you're not allowing yourself to be fully seen and um you're having to be somebody you're not, which is a lot of pressure. And you're absolutely right. You can only do that for so long until that armor gets way too heavy and you have to take it off.
yeah. The good news though, well, I don't know if this is good news, but like you're not alone, right? Like we're two people who have our stories. We are certain there are others out there that have these stories, but there's actually legitimate research that backs up all of this stuff to show that like there's a huge contingency of women that feel this way or have experienced this.
Mhm.
Number one, over apologizing. There have been multiple studies now published on this topic, but one study found that women tend to apologize more frequently than men, even when they committed fewer offenses. And so this is attributed to women having this lower threshold for what constitutes an offense, leading them to apologize more readily. But then another study looked at how often different genders begin statements with phrases like sorry, but, or I might be wrong,
Yes.
but like
Mhm.
women are so much more likely to um, put like an exit clause in the beginning of their statement just because they might be wrong. And I think this is because we've been raised to accommodate.
Mhm. And also not trust ourselves.
Yeah.
There's like a lack of trust because I think when you fully trust yourself, you're less likely to second guess what you're saying, what you're doing. Like I don't you remember being younger and like you would go to a party and like I remember the next day I'd wake up and like ruminate over like things I said.
Yes.
Which
Yep.
like now I don't care because I trust everything that's coming out of me that it's like my true what it is that I truly mean and I'm very like aware of the things that I'm saying and I only say what I mean.
Yeah, and
So
this
there's,
ties back to the research on people pleasing and like emotional labor. So
yeah,
again, you're not alone. Like women are socialized to prioritize other people's feelings and to avoid confrontation. So like
yeah,
this whole set of conditioning leads to behaviors like the over apologizing,
mhm,
downplaying achievements, or shrinking yourself.
yeah,
And by doing that, we're actually taking on additional emotional labor. And that can have a negative impact on us professionally by hindering our career or personally by like causing significantly high levels of anxiety or physiologically like higher levels of cortisol, the stress
yeah.
hormone in our body.
I was just wondering about the cortisol thing, but that makes so much sense. I I talked about this on my Instagram page, but again, like another example of me shrinking myself, but at the time I thought I was being nice and doing the right thing, doing what I should. Um, when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do from like undergraduate to my master's program, I worked as a preschool teacher. And the director of the preschool wanted to offer me like her position. She was like, I think you'd be really good at this. You're on track like for kind of filling this position, blah, blah, blah. But I knew that my coworker really wanted it. She had expressed it to me that she really wanted it. Um, and so I turned it down, which I think it's, I mean, I wasn't meant to do it. Um, but that's just another example of like, I think women, I'm not alone in that when you're constantly undervaluing yourself. And when you do that, like every time you say no to something when your heart says yes, you are like energetically, when I look at this, it's almost like little pieces of you are falling apart or falling off of you.
Mhm. What I love about that is like the most beautiful, giving, and generous thing. Like that's just part of like your soul. But like it is definitely like weighing that other person's well-being or their soul above
Over your
yours. And like you should be equal.
Yeah. Um, So maybe we could talk about some ways to overcome that. Like maybe do you have any tips or guidance? I think like I just kind of learned through like what do they say? Like just we'll just learn through experience. But do you have any like data backing things that actually help to kind of overcome some of those behaviors that we do as women to shrink ourselves or um be like the quote unquote nice girl.
Yeah. So going back to kind of the very beginning of this episode, I talked a little bit about these neural pathways that we create in our brains.
Mhm.
So just like if you remember back to our original psych days, like, Pavlov's study, like you present food when there's a bell ringing and then the dog
Yeah.
salivates and eventually the dog salivates anytime there's a bell, whether
Yeah.
there's food or not, right? So we create these neural pathways in our brains. And so what's happening there is the protector parts of your brain are coming from down here. This is the back of your brain, and it's almost an unconscious reaction by your amygdala. And what you want actually to happen is for you to be making decisions from your higher brain. Um, to be honest, the first part is just recognizing when you're getting hijacked. And in order to do that, you have to start learning to be fully present.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
my biggest tip for people is step one is all about mindfulness and meditation, even if it's just taking 2 minutes to be fully present and pushing away any thoughts. Like,
Yeah.
that's a baby step into learning how to be fully present. And if you're like me and, sitting still for 2 minutes in your house is like impossible, get out in nature and try it. Just find a tree, go ahead and sit underneath it. Set your phone timer for 2 minutes. And any other thoughts that pop into your brain, just acknowledge them and let them go. What this is going to do is it's going to start working out your muscle. Just like you go to the gym to lift weights, you can retrain your brain, but it takes time and practice and repetition. So what you want to do is try to get the switch from here to here to be like happening instantaneously. And so in order to do that, you have to practice. So that's my first tip. What about you?
That's like, that reminds me of my mantra that I always say, which I stay with myself because I have a very big tendency to leave myself. But that is something that I'm always like, that's a goal I'm always keeping. I would say another tip is, well, you can always do like meditations where you go back to that moment where you figure out where that initial block or where that initial story stemmed from. A lot of times it's from childhood. Um, and what you do is you can kind of, there are certain steps you can take to retrain your brain, but then also energetically, you can retrieve that part of your soul that was lost during that time when you felt either immense fear, where you literally like kind of disassociated and left yourself, or whatever was happening in that moment that caused you to think that you had to be a certain way in order to receive love or in order to be liked. Um, and kind of going back and rewriting that story, reprogramming those stories in your mind.
Yeah, I love that so much. I think
Mhm.
for a lot of folks who are on the nice girl journey, it's learning to be okay with yourself and learning that you are enough just the way you are. So another mantra that, I will sometimes do before bed, and I've encouraged my daughter to do too, is just saying 3 times, I am who I am, and that is enough.
Mhm.
And say that 3 times. So that's like the last thing in your brain as you go to sleep. And then, you know, as your brain is kind of healing and repairing overnight, it's starting to rewire your brain.
Yeah. I love that mantra so much. That's another one that I like to use too. Um, I also think spending time with yourself, trying, like you said, like quieting kind of the noise and really trying to stay away from those distractions, just moving through those uncomfortable feelings, you'll realize it's not as big as you think it is. So, for instance, like let's say like boredom is an issue for you. Instead of like going to your phone and like scrolling through Instagram or playing like a game on your phone, try and like do something else, like go for a walk or clean the kitchen and then just see how you feel within the next 15 minutes. I promise like your body will feel calmed down. So not giving into those kind of like temptations. Um, I also think like just working on your self-worth and really get, like I said, getting to know yourself. The more you know yourself, the easier it is.
Absolutely. I mean, you're working kind of against societal expectations, but
Mhm.
anyone can do it with enough practice. One last study, studies have shown that, girls are discouraged from being assertive. And to Christy's
Mhm.
point earlier, we're encouraged to be polite, communal, and nurturing. And this is a socialization process that over time leads to so many females lacking confidence or having difficulty expressing needs and desires.
Mhm.
So, whether you're in your professional life or your personal life, I encourage each of you to practice writing down things you want to say before you
Mhm.
say them. And before you do them verbally, go back and look and release or get rid of the tentative language. So, I just wanted to blah, 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 or I'm sorry, but get rid of all of that noise. Instead, that will help you communicate your needs and desires so much more succinctly. But we're so unaware that it's actually happening. So that's why you have to write
Yeah.
it down and check yourself.
I love that tip. I think that's a really good one. So maybe even just setting aside 5 minutes a couple times a week to maybe do like a little journaling.
Yeah.
Um, I also think that, like I tell my kids this all the time, your friends are going to make you feel good about yourself. They're not going to make you feel bad about yourself. And if they make you feel bad about yourself, then they're not your friends. So just keep that in the back of your mind that like being liked is not everything. Sometimes it's like the most lonely place to be because you're giving away yourself in order to have that achievement or have that group of friends. And you may lose them for a little while, and that may feel scary to some, but what you're gaining in return is yourself. And that is the ultimate gift.
Yeah, I love that so much. And
Yeah.
if you find yourself wanting some accountability or you want to explore this with someone, I do a ton of coaching with folks around kind of living their most authentic lives and learning to heal and retrain their brains against some of these elements of our brain that were once protectors that are no longer serving us. So, and if you feel like you want to go deeper on an energetic level with healing, then you can reach out to Cristy for an appointment.
Yeah, or if you are local to St. Louis, we do have some spots left for our little micro retreat. And we're going to be going over some of this stuff too. So if you are not ready to commit fully to like a coaching session or like a soul session, I encourage you to kind of check out our event link or go to our socials and reach out to us because it's going to be transformational.
Absolutely. It's coming up May 31st. And like Christy said, we don't have any VIP sessions left, sadly. Those are all taken, but you can do a general admission with us and it'll be a fun time. And if you can't make it on May 31st, stay tuned because we are planning something fun for the fall as well. So more to come
Mhm.
on that.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. Well, you guys, I think you guys are all awesome. You guys are all here because you're on a similar path, and there's a reason why you stumbled upon this video. It was not by accident. I believe you were meant to see it. So if you feel like you're struggling with your self-worth, know that Kelly and I value you, and we think you're great. So stop second guessing yourself. You're doing okay.
Bye, everyone.